out here on ET Now, we look at the various aspects and impact COVID-19 is having on our lives, on the economy, on businesses, on our incomes. But the most important part of the story really is where the disease and the battle, the medical battle against the disease is headed. I'm very excited to speak with my guest today. I'm joined now by Dr. Faheem Younus, who's the Chief of Infectious Diseases at the University of Maryland, joining us on the show today for his perspective on where we stand as one of the frontline workers in this battle. Dr. Younus, thank you so much for speaking with us here on ET Now. I want to begin by just getting your sense of where we are in the battle against COVID-19. Are we still sort of struggling to push back to save lives?
Thank you so much for having me. I think we are in a very difficult position right now because the first 3 months of this pandemic, if I were to say these are 4 quarters, I would say the virus won the first quarter because look at the kind of harm it has done globally. It has rattled economies. It has really exposed the weaknesses in our infrastructure. Now it's time for us to get our act together, as I would say, and that is having appropriate testing, making sure that we can then use those tests by doing the right quarantining and surveillance. There is no shortcut to success, as they say. There is no elevator to success. You have to take the stairs. So unfortunately, we are in that sort of a situation.
Even so many weeks after COVID-19 first became a reality in all of our lives, there is still so much of mix-up of information out there. So I just want to get your views on this, and I know myth busting is something that you very regularly do. Is the solution to build herd immunity or wait it out for a vaccine? Does something like herd immunity actually exist where you just let enough of your population get a mild version of this disease so that we're all safe in the longer term?
Well, it's true. Of course, one of the reasons this virus is so virulent because it's a new strain. So the whole world is a target. Nobody had immunity. Nobody had any antibodies against it. Influenza, which potentially could be a very bad virus as well, but all of us have seen that virus in one way or the other, so our body can fight a little bit. The concept of herd immunity clearly is a scientific concept, but it sort of happens naturally. And it's very hard to engineer herd immunity with a virus that has maybe 1% mortality. So why I say, look at the population of India. God forbid if 1/3 of India was infected with this virus, like it happened 100 years ago with Spanish flu. Spanish flu infected 1/3 of the world, even though there was very little global travel back then. Now when 4 billion people travel every year, if this virus just infected 1/3 of India and the mortality was less than 1%, that's a massive number. We cannot deal with that. So I think it's a scary phenomenon. We cannot just go out and try to expose more people and say, you know what, everybody go out with your life and herd immunity will take care of it. I think that means we are calculating that we are okay with 1% mortality because that's what this virus is going to do. And it's going to overload our systems because that's where the concept of flattening the curve comes in as well. The best way to deal with this is that you spread it out, that you do social distancing, you try to slow down. You have to pay. When you have to pay your mortgage and you don't have the money, what do? You spread it out over 30 years. And it doesn't kill you. And at the end of the day, you have that home. So I think it's sort of the same strategy here. We know we don't have the money to pay up front. We know we cannot just pay up front hundreds and thousands of our lives and our loved ones. We cannot pay up front our complete systems and infrastructure. So the best strategy we have is to do social distancing, do mass testing, find out who has the virus, look at their family members because 10 to 15% of the family members are typically positive. Give them affordable solutions that can work in India. India's condition is different in South Korea and then from England and from USA. So the solutions if India's problems are there, the solutions are also there. We have to find simple solutions that can work for that population, but we have to spread it out. Otherwise, it's going to topple our systems.
No, absolutely. That's not an option we can look at. Just your assessment of how India has been tackling with it. Now, India put in fairly strict lockdown measures relatively early on, and the absolute numbers seem lesser for a size of our country. Some say that's because we're not testing enough, though we have scaled up testing now. Do you think we're moving towards possibly flattening the curve? Your assessment of the battle here in India?
Very difficult to answer because I don't have all the data points that I'm sure your government must have. And whenever I've been talking, wherever I'm telling people we have to be united at this time. Virus doesn't discriminate. This virus has no emotion, it has no religion, it has no, uh, none of those visceral feelings. We have to think like a machine and first of all be united. And by that, what I mean is the data points that your government must have, that is where the answer is going to be. Because if a country of the scale of India, I think you should be doing 100,000 tests a day for a month or more than that for a month consistently in hotspots and then consistently looking at those numbers and analyzing them. So it's not the definition of what's adequate and what's enough changes dramatically. For New Zealand, it's going to be very different, a country of 5 million people. What the number of adequate tests for New Zealand or for South Africa, a country of 55 million people, versus India is going to be very different.
Um, Let me get your sense on social distancing and the kind of lockdown we're seeing here in India. Uh, One of the debates internally is where do you draw the balance, because extensive lockdown and extended lockdown also has a huge economic impact on incomes, on daily wage laborers. People could go hungry, they could starve, businesses could pack up. But on the other hand, you have to protect people as well. Is there any middle path out of this?
Excellent point. And this once again brings me what are the opportunities of unification here? I think all countries have similar problems, similar challenges. I wrote a piece for a newspaper essentially laying out this strategy that a complete lockdown, in my humble opinion, is not a good strategy in a country where a lot of people operate on a you keep and you eat what you kill today model. A lot of our people don't have bank balances, they don't have safety nets. If they don't go out and work, their families will perish. So I think what should we do in that situation? You have to have certain essential elements of the society continue to operate. First of all, you have to create a sense of safety within the people. Caution is one thing, panic is another. We cannot have panic among our people. We have to give them caution, number one. We have to make sure they feel safe. If you get tested, police isn't going to show up on your family's house. We're not going to arrest you. We're not going to forcefully take your rights away and put you in quarantine. We're not going to stigmatize you. We're not going to tie you to hospital beds. People have those fears. So first of all, make people safe, number one. And number two, after that, have enough testing, whatever that enough is. Put as many resources. I would say if you have $100 or 100 rupees, put 90 rupees in testing and don't put your money in ventilators. That's a much longer conversation we can have another day. Then you have to figure out what are the main essential components of your economy. You educate those people, you say, look, everyone has to wear a mask. If you must work in a factory, make sure you stay as much away from each other, maybe 6 feet away. Don't shake hands, don't hug. These touchy-feely things are very common in our culture. I think people are already educated about it. Take daily temperatures, and if you are having a fever, stay home. Get tested immediately. And that sort of social distance is controlled release. This is not a switch on where you can simply turn the society back to normal. So you do all of that under the age of 60. Those who are over the age of 60, those who are on dialysis, on chemotherapy, you tell them you are at a very high risk, stay home. In transportation, at work, you put lines on the floor, 6 feet, when people are about to pay for something in a store. And if it's a small store, and I understand, I've been to many of those, nukkad ki dukaan, those little corner stores. Whatever you can do, if you can do 2 feet, it's better than nothing. Put spots on the floor so people can stand separately, leave empty seats in transportation. It will increase your cost, but you'll have to do all of those things and have sort of a middle ground and then continue to test and reassess. Every month, you'll have to reassess where it is. It's like driving a car. Sometimes you'll have to put it in a high gear. Sometimes you'll have to put it in reverse. If you see a ditch in front of you, you're not going to keep driving. You're going to put it in reverse and you say, you know what, as a country, we have to go back to a lockdown now. People have to understand this may be a 2020 thing. This is not a week or a month. We may have to plan for this whole year to adapt, to change our lifestyle for each other's survival.
Wow, that's really some harsh truth there. Last question, Dr. Younus, is on possible cures. The world is talking about hydroxychloroquine. Do you think that works? These plasma treatments, antibodies from those who have had it, and meanwhile the race towards the vaccine. What do you think will eventually work out?
So on treatments, I think it's a very open-ended question. We typically, as physicians, we are used to randomized control trials, and we're used to very peer-reviewed, robust, data-driven articles. Due to the fast movement of this virus, the amount of spread and damage it's doing, I appreciate a lot of frontline doctors who are giving us their information, but at the same time, it's not all peer-reviewed. It's not all as randomized control as we would like to see. So right now, understand that the medical community is doing a lot of guesswork based on their years of experience. So first of all, we cannot say with conviction whether hydroxychloroquine works, whether remdesivir works, whether steroids work, whether tocilizumab works. There are many, many drugs. There are about 500 drug trials going on right now. I think your viewers will be happy and shocked to hear that. The vaccine development for this virus started within 3 months. I've been doing this infectious diseases for over 20 years. I have never seen anything like that. I have never imagined this degree of speed, attention, solidarity. So on one end, I think it's beautiful news because we have excellent response globally. On the other end, we are away from exact success. That vaccine may take another year or two. My worry is, will it be accessible and affordable for everyone in places like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Africa, many of the resource limited places? I have a worry. It's one thing to have a vaccine. It's another thing if that vaccine costs 10,000 rupees, how many people will be able to afford it? So yeah, there are some unknowns in the future.
Absolutely. The silver lining there is a number of Indian companies also in the race to develop a vaccine quickly. On the pharmaceutical end, we have been pretty strong, so we can keep our fingers crossed there. Thank you so much, Dr. Younus, for joining us.
Appreciate the time. Thank you.